Good afternoon, and welcome to the annual Women's Equality Day celebration. The year 2020 marks the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing and protecting women's constitutional right to vote. The passage marked the largest expansion of democracy in the history of our country. It's so nice for all of you to join us. My name is Nancy Carlson, and I'm very pleased to participate in this celebration as MC. The event sponsors is the Coalition of Women's Organizations, which includes the Indiana Women of Achievement Awards Committee, League of Women Voters, American Association of University Women, National Organization for Women, Coalition of 100 Women, and Friends of the Conley, Inc. Now, what is this event all about? To partially answer the question, I'm pleased to introduce Mayor Dan Ridenour, who will present the Women's Equality Day, August 26th, 2020 proclamation. Mayor?
Thank you, Nancy. So I have a City of Muncie proclamation. And so I will look down as I read most of this. It's long and important. Whereas 1 century ago, the 19th Amendment was certified on August 26th, 1920. Since that day, countless leaders and advocates have carried the torch and moved our nation and community forward. Today, women in Muncie know that not only can they cast a vote, but they can also run for office and help shape our city, county, state, and nation. And whereas this anniversary, which came to be as a result of a 72-year nonviolent campaign to extend the right to vote to women, is an appropriate time to reflect on the remarkable accomplishments of women. And whereas the anniversary date of the ratification of the 19th Amendment remains a symbolic day that honors this fight for equal rights. And whereas Vivian Conley exemplified the promotion of women in Muncie and acted so that these rights and privileges are available to all citizens equally. Therefore, it is fitting to honor women locally with the Vivian Conley Award for their leadership in service to community, education, health, humanitarian aid, art, environment, religion, and business here in Muncie, Indiana. And whereas the women of Muncie, Indiana are to be commended and supported in commemoration of this special day, recognizing women who continue to fight to improve the status of women here and around the globe. Now, therefore, I, Dan Ridenour, Mayor of this great city of Muncie, Indiana, proclaim August 26th, 2020 as Women's Equality Day in the city of Muncie, Indiana. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ridenour. So now you've been reminded that Women's Equality Day 2020 is the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, granting women in the United States the right to vote, hence my costume. In 1971, Congress designated in Public Law 93-382 this day, August 26th, as Women's Equality Day. Jeanette Rankin is probably our hero, for she was not only the first woman to be elected to Congress in 1918, but also the impetus for the 19th Amendment, which is printed on the front of your program. In fact, to introduce this article was her first act in the United States House of Representatives. Wisconsin had the distinction of being the first state to ratify the amendment in 1919, and Tennessee was the last to send it over the top in 1920. And very important, the amendment we celebrate passed in Tennessee by only one vote, a reminder that a single vote does matter. I observe that many of our female friends and neighbors have very little understanding of what it took to achieve this vote, or perhaps they do not care because they don't vote. We must tell this story. As we know, one person who did not sit passively was Vivian Conley. Her picture is behind me. Vivian honored the history of women's suffrage, and so she pushed younger women and young men to new heights. It always surprises me how many of the Equality Day honorees have known Vivian and also the strong impression she made upon them. But why should I be surprised? After all, she was Muncie's own Mother Teresa, and she was at the forefront of many community issues related to education, civil rights, and aging. An outstanding woman in so many ways, she was also a non-traditional college student, earning both her bachelor's and master's degrees at Ball State while in her 60s. Jean Ammon has shared with us a memory of Vivian from her work in the provost's office. Without an appointment, she would cheerfully stop in to chat with the provost, then Warren Vanderhill. "Hey, provost," she would say, and she would continue on down the hall to sometimes praise what Ball State was doing and sometimes chastise him for what it was not doing. Jean would sit there eavesdropping, thinking what important ideas she had for the well-being of both young students and those we call non-traditional. As Vivian left, one could see a glow about her face and a halo around her head. She always said exactly what she was thinking, and what she said was just about always right. As a result, a Vivian V. Conley Memorial Re-Entry Scholarship is given annually to a part-time, non-traditional student. You can find information about donating to that fund by contacting Ball State University Foundation, citing the Vivian V. Conley Fund, number 1850. Number 1850. This scholarship was first awarded to a non-traditional student in 1994. Since that time, the scholarship has helped over 20 non-traditional Ball State students pursue the goal of completing a college degree. In a 1988 interview, Vivian Conley stated, "The number one thing is knowledge. Higher education will free us from the shackles we live in. I once heard Reverend Jesse Jackson say that ignorance is just another form of slavery." Vivian continued, "Without education, you are enslaved. I believe that higher education opens doors to a different quality of life. It is in Vivian's spirit that I am pleased to announce that the recipient of the 2021 Vivian V. Conley Memorial Re-Entry Scholarship is Jennifer Randall. Jennifer is a Ball State sophomore and a Ball State employee. In July 2018, she began work at the Career Center, where she's coordinator of employee relations. She works full-time and attends school part-time while pursuing a BS degree in business administration. She lives in Portland, Indiana, and has all her life. Jennifer is very busy, to say the least. She is married with 3 children. Her son's a sophomore at Ball State, along with his mother. Her older daughter is beginning her senior year of high school, and her younger daughter is starting 5th grade. Jennifer says that one of her main reasons for going back to college is to show her children it can be done. She maintains that her family is very supportive of her attending college, and they help out with everything that needs to be done around the house. Her children are very active in sports, so she tries to manage her time so that she can attend sporting events, work hard at her job, attend to motherly duties, and still succeed in her classes. Jennifer is a strong and enthusiastic student, currently holding a 3.777 GPA. She will receive $1,230 for the upcoming school year. Jennifer, congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be part of today's recognition. Most importantly, thank you for those who provided me with the Vivian Conley Memorial Reentry Scholarship. While the financial contribution to my education has certainly made an impact on my goals, it's also been an encouragement to read about Vivian Conley. I recognize there's several similarities to her story and mine. Like Nancy said, I am going to school at the same time as my son, while also providing an example to my 2 younger daughters to pursue their goals. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Please note your certificate will be delivered to you.
Thank you.
Next, we honor 6 local women who exemplify Vivian Conley's spirit by giving back to our community. Their contributions are significant, and I know you will be impressed. But Vivian would say that's not the point. The special tribute that we pay to Vivian and to the other women today should push each of us in this audience to greater public service. And then we will truly honor Vivian and all those others who have worked for the equality we celebrate today. Certainly one way we can move forward is to help the coalition push for fuller participation of women on decision-making boards and commissions and in public office. Now, without further delay, let us meet the 2020 Vivian V. Conley honorees. We are pleased to present Heidi Hale, recipient of the Vivian V. Conley Award for her distinction in art marketing, and community support. I'm reading now in first person Heidi's comments. My father was in the Air Force, which allowed me to grow up traveling around the world. After he retired, my parents moved back to Muncie. I stayed in Utah, and that's where I met my husband, Sean. Once we married and were ready to have children, we moved back to Muncie. I wanted my children to grow up around family, something I didn't have. I am a self-taught artist with most of my knowledge coming from books of artists that I admired. I became a stay-at-home mom, and that's where I realized my passion. I began selling jewelry to friends and family with an occasional art fair or craft show. Ann Johnson of FB Fogg contacted me to do a Saturday salon and to be a member of Artworks Gallery. My designs became popular, not only locally, but also online. After the birth of my third child, I decided to take a break from designing. 4 years later, I had an idea for a stackable mother's ring. I have one on. Within 1 month of creating this ring, which is still a popular item on the website, I had 16 employees working from our home. After a couple of months of working out of the house, my husband and I realized this isn't a fluke and that it was time to make it official. There was no place I wanted to be other than downtown Muncie. I knew the history and the amazing people who were trying so hard to revitalize it. We chose our location downtown, knowing that we really didn't need a storefront, but downtown Muncie did. What we didn't anticipate was the excitement from the community. We are now in our 5th year downtown. Our sales continue to increase year after year, not only from locals, but people coming from around the state, Michigan, Tennessee, Ohio, Illinois, and Kentucky. The one thing everyone loves is the open concept. When you enter our space, you see a jewelry store, but once you take a couple more steps, you can see all our artists working. In our 5th year of business, we've received over 100,000 orders that have come from all over the world. When the space came up for sale where Olive and Slate is now, I knew we would be crazy not to take advantage of such a great location, especially being across from Heidi Hale. I knew locals were going to Indy to shop at boutiques and would stock up on little gifts for friends and family. We are now in our 3rd year and are thriving. HJH and Olive and Slate has proved to others with a dream that downtown Muncie is a viable option for any business. Heidi, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you so much. I just want to thank everyone for this honor. The one thing I can say about downtown Muncie and across the city is that Vivian's spirit is alive and well and is glowing through the community leaders that we have. I want to thank everyone for honoring me on this day, and I want to congratulate all the other nominees.
Thank you. Your certificate will be presented to you at a different time. Best wishes. The next one, we are pleased to present Linda Hansen, recipient of the Vivian V. Conley Award for her distinction in civic education and service. Linda Hansen is a tireless civic leader in the challenging work promoting and expanding voter participation in the democratic process in Indiana. About 5 years ago, Linda accepted leadership in the nonpartisan League of Women Voters of Muncie-Delaware County. A few years later, she joined the State League Board. When death and illness vacated leadership positions, she stepped up as co-president while continuing her local responsibility. Linda has led the League in collaborative efforts with other state organizations to increase historically low voter turnout in Indiana. Most recently, that work was intense lobbying for no excuse absentee ballots. She also directs comprehensive educational efforts with both citizens and elected officials to promote redistricting reform, so that drawing of Indiana's 7 U.S. congressional districts would be done by a non-partisan citizen commission instead of legislators themselves. The district maps designed by citizen commissions in other states demonstrate that when elections are competitive, voters turn out in greater numbers. Indiana does not yet have no excuse absentee ballots or a citizens commission to draw districts, but Linda has not given up. She is fearless in reaching out to elected officials, challenging them when necessary, and encouraging other citizens to get involved. The League of Women Voters was founded by suffragist leaders after the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920. It is appropriate that Linda Hansen, both local and state league leader, is honored this commemorative year for her civic work on behalf of all Indiana voters. Congratulations, Linda. Would you like to say a few words? You're muted.
I want to thank you for this recognition and for those kind words. It's an honor to be in the company of so many women who have made a positive difference in the life of our community. And certainly to Vivian Conley for beginning a lot of this by her example. We are all standing on the shoulders of those who've come before us. As women, we know we've achieved a lot in the past century, but we still have a long way to go to achieve our equality. Women's Equality Day marks 100 years since the 19th Amendment was certified, with that one vote in Tennessee and then the president's signing. The suffragists who worked to win this right understood that their next task was to educate voters so that they could participate as informed citizens. The League of Women Voters has been performing that task for 100 years and continuing to work for equal access to safe, secure voting. And Nancy mentioned some of the things that we've been working on. It's not an easy road. The suffrage leaders worked through a pandemic to win us this right, and a century later, we're working through a pandemic to exercise it. The suffragettes dealt with the flu, the miles that they had to travel across the country to get the vote and the approval to get the amendment passed. Some of them died because of the flu. We're dealing with COVID-19 and digital highways and byways, as well as trying to get out into the community safely. So if you want to honor Women's Equality Day, commit to this fight. Celebrate the women who fought for our right to vote by making sure that you exercise it, and then organize your friends and families. Make sure they have a voting plan this fall. You can check vote411.org, the League's website that has information on races all across the country. You put in your zip code and it will get you to your own candidates. After about September 15th, we hope to have all of our local candidate information up. So before you actually send in your ballot, double check. You can register there as well if you haven't done that. And our local league website and Facebook also has voter information, and they will have the information about our candidate forums. So stay informed, vote, get everyone else to vote. And thank you again.
Thank you, Linda, and congratulations. Your certificate will be delivered to you. The next awardee is Julie Borgman. She's the recipient of the Vivian V. Conley Award for her distinction in environmental protection. Julie is the Executive Director for Red Tail Land Conservancy, a nonprofit regional land trust based in East Central Indiana. She works to connect people to nature and permanently protects natural areas for future generations. Graduating from Purdue University with her Bachelor of Science and Doctor of Pharmacy, she practiced pharmacy in Indianapolis, Muncie, and Albany, Indiana. After a 25-year professional career, she chose to follow her passion for connecting people to nature. She found pushing nature is much more enjoyable and rewarding than pushing pills. Julie believes the health of our environment and the people's well-being are intertwined. A mother of 3, she raised her kids to love the outdoors. She wanted families in our community to have places to explore nature too. Starting first as a volunteer with Redtail, Julie became their first education and outreach coordinator in 2015. She later added fundraising responsibilities and in 2018 became executive director. As she says, it is extremely powerful to know the work we do, protecting woods, wetlands, and grasslands means future generations will still have wild places to experience the wonders of nature. Julie also serves on the Indiana Land Protection Alliance Board. When she isn't working to protect land and connect people to nature, Julie is usually spending time with family and friends, hiking, kayaking, biking, exploring, or reading a book, outdoors whenever possible. Redtail Land Conservancy, established in 1999, has protected over 2,700 acres in East Central Indiana. By preserving and restoring the dynamic vitality of forests, prairies, and wetlands, Redtail Land Conservancy plans for a future where the natural beauty of East Central Indiana will exist for future generations. We protect land and provide critical access to food and shelter for vulnerable wildlife. We maintain nature preserves, allowing vibrant places for outdoor recreation and quiet spaces for reflection. We start conversations, offering landowners conservation options to keep the natural integrity of their property. Julie deserves our gratitude for making sure we have places where we can enjoy our wildlife. Congratulations, Julie. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you everyone on the committee. I'm incredibly humbled by this award and recognition, especially when I look and see all the women in our community who have done so much to make this such a wonderful place to live. I also want to say I am so admirable of you, Nancy, in wearing the costume of the suffragettes. I just applaud women especially who are willing to have fun and just show your enthusiasm, and it's infectious, and I think it helps all of us to get in the spirit and appreciate it. Thank you. The last thing I just want to say is, being in healthcare, you're really not given the opportunity. So much of what you do is there taking care of patients and taking care of people. And this change that I took, maybe a little bit like Vivian Conley, as a second phase of my life, has been so rewarding, not just because I get to spend time outdoors and help people experience that wonder, but really get involved in the community. The partnerships that our organization has is what enables it to really accomplish its mission. So getting to know so many of the other leaders in our community and people who do such amazing things, and then being able to partner with them has been so rewarding in terms of what I've been able to experience in this sort of second phase of my life and second career. So thank you again. I'm so incredibly humbled and just thoroughly enjoying being a part of the program this evening.
Thanks, Julie, and note that your certificate will be delivered to you.
Thank you.
Our next awardee is Faith Serf, recipient of the Vivian V. Conley Award for her distinction in public education. Faith is an exceptionally passionate educator who has an uncanny way of seeing the greatness within every student she serves. She recognizes the importance of connecting with families and communities and works in partnership with them to help create a village where all children can dream, grow, and thrive. As master teacher for Longfellow Elementary School in Muncie, Faith comes alongside her building principal to offer innovative, cutting-edge support systems goal-setting ideas, and evaluation tools specific to the needs of the school. Further, Faith utilizes data to assist the teachers in their daily reading and mathematics lesson planning. The data informs classroom instruction and is used to create individual student pull-out plans. She gives leadership to academic support systems such as The Den, a school community mentoring program. She also meets with parents and families on a regular basis, offering a listening ear and solid guidance. Faith's life is a sacrifice of love. If working in a school day education is not enough, she also co-teaches in the Muncie P3 after-school academic enrichment program. She extends her day to guide students toward math proficiency and the goal of reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. As curriculum coordinator, she helps Muncie P3 develop enrichment activities that are hands-on and fun-loving. An educator with Muncie Community Schools for 27 years, Faith holds bachelor's and master's degree in elementary education from Ball State. She and her husband, Jonathan, together have 6 children. Overall, Faith says that her calling is to provide educators, parents, and students with the inspiration and resources to encourage them to grow, always seeking new knowledge to become the best they can be. Congratulations, Faith. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I'd just like to say that it's such a great honor to be here today. Miss Conley really was a true trailblazer, and I'm extremely proud and honored to be recognized on that same path. I also like to thank the organization for this recognition, as well as Rita Johnson and her family for the nomination. I am forever grateful. Thank you.
And thank you. Your certificate will be delivered to you. Our next recipient, Dr. Jayne Bielke, is receiving the distinction in scholarship and service relative to racial inclusion and justice. We are pleased to nominate Dr. Jayne Bielke for the award. She's a professor in the Department of Educational Studies at Ball State University. Her PhD in the history of education and her research interests focus on African American educational history and critical multicultural education. Among her many academic achievements and interests, Jayne is a recognized authority on the Julius Rosenwald Fund of the early 1900s. The story of the Rosenwald Fund is an extraordinary chapter in the racial struggle for access to education in the United States. The philanthropic activities of the fund were a gutsy, bold expression of the belief in democracy and equity. When you have studied, as Jayne has, how the Rosenwald Fund succeeded in building over 5,000 schools for Black children in the segregated South of the 1930s and 40s, your perspective about possibilities within challenging social contexts are forever expanded. We see Jayne's inspired perspectives translated into action. She's in the past served as branch president of the Muncie NAACP and as a member of the board of the Muncie Boys and Girls Club. She currently serves on the boards of the YWCA Central Indiana, the Friends of the Conley Inc., and the Union Literary Institute Preservation Society. Jayne's scholarship informs her service and her teaching, and her service and teaching for social justice inform her scholarship. Jayne has received the Teachers College Outstanding Teacher Award and will be a faculty fellow for the next 2 years at the Virginia B. Ball Center for Creative Inquiry. She is thoughtful and generous in guiding her students to understand the history that will affect them every day as P12 teachers and citizens. Muncie thanks you, Dr. Jayne Bielke. Would you like to say a few words?
I would. Thank you so much, Nancy, for that wonderful introduction. I want to talk a little bit about Vivian Conley's daughter, Ms. Myrna Robertson. It was several years ago when the Conley branch of the library was closed. And in that space, the folks who were known as the Friends of the Conley Library wondered what they were going to do next. How could they continue to achieve their agenda? And so I remember so vividly sitting in Miss Myrna's garage with several other people. And they decided that they were going to become a nonprofit organization. And so they brainstormed, how do we go about becoming a 501c3? What paperwork do we fill out? Who do we send it to? How much does it cost? And at the end of the day, the Friends of the Conley Incorporation was formed. And it is, to me, a wonderful representation of grassroots efforts, of people who care about something and who find ways, who find resources in order to fulfill that mission. And so I want to point out Miss Myrna and also Marlene Mitchell, Joyce Marshall, Mark Krebs, and several of the other people who really formed kind of the backbone of that organization. After it was formed, my students in my multicultural education course spent time every evening that it was open, tutoring students in high school and junior high. Not only were those students helped, but also my students gained an appreciation for what it is like to be somebody who may be struggling in high school or junior high and who doesn't know where to turn for help. So I give all credit to Miss Myrna and to Marlene and the others who are involved with that. But I want to also say that I looked over the list of people who have won the Conley before, and I'm humbled that my name would be added to it. But it really forms a gallery of people in Muncie and Delaware County who, as the mayor said, have made contributions from every walk of life. It's really quite astounding. You know, you look at universities, schools, nonprofit organizations, neighborhoods, environmentalists, all of these women who have at one time or another contributed to life in Muncie and Delaware County. It really is a tribute, I think, to all of us and to all who have gone before. And finally, I want to give a shout out to the League of Women Voters. If you have to stand in line, bring a lawn chair so you can rest. If you plan on casting an absentee or mail-in ballot, please do so as soon as possible. The vote is important. People have died for the right to vote, and we need to make sure that voting remains that thing that really represents our democracy. So thank you so much for this honor. I'm really, truly humbled and very pleased. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Bibielki. Note that your certificate will get delivered to you later. We are pleased to present Julie Mason as the recipient of the Vivian V. Conley Award for her distinction in civic service. Today, Julie is honored for her role as a volunteer on the Muncie and Delaware County Census Council. She acts as an advocate for our community, encouraging everyone she encounters to participate in the 2020 census. Further, she provides guidance, ideas, and support to fellow volunteers. Julie joined the Census Council in June 2019 and has since fully participated. Her 36 years as a civilian working for the United States Army gave her experience in deploying materials en masse to spread information across a community, and she did not hesitate in this recent endeavor either. As we say, she put her feet on the ground and shared information about the 2020 census with everyone. She delivered materials to churches, food pantries, social service groups, rental companies, and more. She even shared census partner stickers with businesses as she ran her personal daily errands. It may well be that she invited more groups to be a census partner than the rest of the Census Council members combined. Julie worked hard to think of the places the Census Council had missed. For example, she reached out to the AMC movie theater and was able to host an information table on a Tuesday, the discount day, and on a Saturday morning. Most recently, she led a group of volunteers to share information about the census at Muncie's Juneteenth celebration. Clearly, Julie is an active and giving community volunteer. There are many who are grateful that she finds the time to include the Census Council on her list of volunteer duties. Without Julie's contribution to the Census Council, the reach to the public would have been much shorter. Thank you, Julie. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank the council for the nomination, but most importantly, I want to thank Callie, who's over our committee, Census CCC, for all the involvement that she has allowed me to do and work freely doing this project. As I was looking over some of the recipients, I had such a great legacy as far as the people that have been on this list. My mother, the late Clementine Johnson, was nominated in 2016, and I was very fortunate to be able to actively participate in her award ceremony that she had in 2016. Other legacies I see is Bertha Mason, who was my stepmother, who was also on the Muncie Library Board, highly involved, and other people as I see that was so important in my life and they were mentors. And I would like to share with the group that when I was growing up in the Muncie homes, they call it the millennial right now, I grew up with Miss Myrna Conley and all of her children. We all grew up there together. And I want to share with you a little bit about why I'm so involved in the Census 2020 and why I have a passion for it. And the story that I tell is, I don't know if it was segregation, I don't know if it was urban planning during that time, but when I lived in the Muncie home, it was truly a community. And what I mean by that is, in our neighborhood, we had a playground, we had a child development center, we had the YMCA that was actually ran by Mr. Roy Bewley back in those days. We had recreational program. We could literally walk to our elementary school, which was safe at that time, which was Garfield. So you can say it was segregation because they didn't want us to, play with children. But all I know, one more thing we had a child development center that was run by Miss Lucille Davis. So to me, people say, maybe I was poor, didn't know it, but I just know that there were some people that cared about what we did to make sure that the children in that neighborhood, including Mert Conley and Brian and all of us that grew up in the Muncie homes in the 50s were well developed. And I say that I have been that. That's how I learned how to eat Brussels sprouts and broccoli and all those things, because I went to Miss Lucille's child care center that was located within 2 blocks from 1 block from where I lived in the Muncie homes. So I encourage each and everyone to have the same passion that I have for the census, because it's going to affect everyone directly the next 10 years. When we have disasters that happen in our community, the money just doesn't show up. They go and look at those numbers. They also use those numbers when businesses want to come to Muncie. For example, they say we're a food desert because we don't have the proper business model. Well, we want to change that information. Also, the census is very important as far as redistricting. It affects how many House of Representatives we have in the state of Indiana. So I still am pushing for the Census 2020. I need all of your support to continue to do that. If you could think of any way to share it, we're going to do it. You may see it. You may see me anywhere, anytime, with a little card saying, "Have you done your census?" And if you haven't, I'll give you a card to do a call. So again, I want to thank Callie for nominating me. And most important, I want to thank all my friends. I'm sorry, crying now. All my friends and my families that have been so supportive of me.
Congratulations, Julie.
In my
and your
life. Thank
certificate
you.
will be delivered to you.
Thank you.
Much respect and admiration for all of our honorees today. It is customary on this day to end our program with a guest speaker who has worked diligently to promote women's equality. Today, it is Jessica Jenkins, Vice President of Collections and Storytelling at Minnetrista Cultural Center. In this role, she oversees the management of the Minnetrista Heritage Collection and leads the institution's research and storytelling efforts. Outside of her museum career, Jessica is also a historian of women's suffrage. Timely. Her new book, Exploring Women's Suffrage Through 50 Historic Treasures, hit bookshelves earlier this year. She will speak on the provocative and challenging topic, Exploring Women's Suffrage. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Nancy. So if I can manage it, I'm going to share some slides while I talk. So let me get that going here. Okay. And let me, one last thing. Okay. So I'm here today to speak a little bit about suffrage. I think we've gathered by now why this is really important today and specifically this year. And while 2020 has certainly been a unique year so far, today I really want to talk about Muncie's history, especially around remarkable women and those women who were involved in advocating for women's right to vote. So this year, as we know, marks the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. And this groundbreaking legislation provided countless women with the opportunity to vote, a citizenship right that they had really formally been fighting for at the national level for over 70 years at that point. And while the history of suffrage is really quite complex with, as I like to think of it, lots of little nooks and crannies to explore and kind of get lost in. For me, one of the most compelling things about the history of suffrage is that it really is a story of all people, not just women, but also men. And it's a history that encompasses all social classes. It's a story of immigrants. And it's a story of families with deep American roots, both Black and white. So several years ago, when I began working at Minnetrista, I personally became interested in finding out if members of the Ball family were active in the suffrage movement. As a researcher of women's voting rights, I was naturally interested in knowing if the women who had lived on the homes in what's now our museum campus, if they were supporters of women's rights to vote. And as it turns out, a cursory glance of archival records at our institution really didn't turn up what I was looking for. But that didn't really deter me. So I began doing what any good historian does, and I cast a much broader net and started looking over at Ball State, started checking local newspaper records and really digging in and seeing what I could find. And in doing so, I was not only able to answer my own question about the Ball family, but I found myself learning a really compelling history of Muncie's broader suffrage history. So the quick answer is yes, members of the Ball family were supporters of women's voting rights and the 19th Amendment. Such notable women as Bessie Brady Ball, Bertha Crosley Ball, Emma Wood Ball, and Sarah Rogers Ball. But it wasn't just the wives of the Ball brothers that got involved in advocating for women's voting rights. Emma's son, William, was known to have attended suffrage meetings held at his parents' house, Maplewood, along Minnetrista Boulevard. And Sarah's daughter, Helen, who was only a teenager at the time, was a member of a local suffrage club, just like her mother. And I think probably my most favorite tidbit about the family is that we should never forget that men were suffragists too. And Dr. Lucius Ball, the husband of Sarah, was a dues-paying member of a local suffrage club as well. But to stop the suffrage narrative in Muncie with the Ball family, however, would really be leaving out the large part of the story, the larger percentage of what this story is. And in addition to the Ball family, there were countless other women from the Muncie community who really agitated and advocated for women's right to vote in the second decade of the 20th century. So founded in 1912, the Women's Franchise League of Muncie existed to educate women on civic awareness and secure the ballot. So a pretty straightforward objective to work towards. And membership dues were open to almost any women who joined. And I want to put a pin in that word almost and have us remember that, because we'll come back to that in a couple minutes. Men could also be honorary members of the Women's Franchise League, although they could not hold office and they could not vote on matters of the organization. Those rights were reserved for the female members. Those female members were the voting body of this organization, very rightly so. So yearly dues were 50 cents, a bargain even at that time. And half of that money would go to the local organization to help defray costs and, you know, work on the things that they were doing. And then the other half would be sent to the Indiana State Suffrage Association. And so what you really see here is that between its founding in 1912 and 1920, when the 19th Amendment is ratified, the Franchise League grew to almost 250 members, which was a pretty big jump in what really was not a lot of years. So like many local suffrage groups, the Franchise League often met in the homes of their members. And very importantly, these meetings provided an opportunity for like-minded women to gather together, to share ideas and opinions, to rally around a cause, and in many ways, to find a support system for themselves. We need to remember that advocating for voting rights at this time was not necessarily a popular thing to do, according to most citizens. Certainly that view shifted the closer you got to 1920, but let's just say it was not necessarily going to gain you a lot of friends, right? You know, but you might be asking, so besides gathering together with each other, you know, what did these women really do to advocate for women's voting rights? And I would respond with a lot. They did plenty. It's important to know that these were very brave, very strong women who worked to encourage their community to support voting rights for women. And to do so, they took many steps. So they distributed pamphlets and flyers, something that we see still happening today that's very important, how we get our public educated. They helped other area communities form their own suffrage clubs. They also paid for subscriptions to suffrage-specific publications, such as the Woman's Journal that you'll see here up on the screen. And these publications, they had them placed at the public library as well as the courthouse. These were places that suffragists knew they would be seen. So for them, paying for those subscriptions themselves was very, very important to make sure that these were the kinds of things that people were seeing when they picked up something to flip through really quickly. Additionally, Muncie suffragists did dip their toes into the water of advocating for better labor laws for women and children in a community that really was a hub of manufacturing. It really should come as no surprise that these activists in Muncie were also concerned with the well-being of female and child laborers in our community. And when state and national and state suffrage organizations needed help with fundraising, Muncie women really stepped up to the plate. Working with McNaughton's department store, they put together a very interesting suffrage window display that seems like, okay, well, it's a window display. But department stores in this era were the place to be, or at least the place to walk past and check out window displays. So this was a very, very visible place. And what they pulled together was, in the center of this window display, they had a very large old brass kettle. And what this was a suffrage melting pot. And what this was is it was a place where local residents could deposit old jewelry, broken watches, old coins, other metal items that they might look to discard or perhaps could, you know, part with. And these items were melted down and the proceeds were contributed back to the national organization in support of advocating for a national suffrage amendment. So Muncie suffragists also really embraced media and technology. When the National American Woman Suffrage Association produced the suffrage film Your Girl and Mine in 1915, Muncie's local group brought this movie to town. Cinema was still pretty young at this time, and suffragists knew that moving pictures would attract many, many viewers. And if for no other reason than the fact that it was a novelty. And that was okay with them. If that got them into the theater, that was a good reason. So certainly the large crowds packing into movie houses for suffragists would really be a captive audience just waiting to hear why they should support women's voting rights. And several screenings of this movie were given at the Columbia Theater in Muncie on February 22nd, 1915, and suffragists sold nearly 1,500 tickets to just a small handful of showings. So they packed the house. And something that I absolutely want to talk about today is that I would like to take a moment to point out that the Muncie Equal Franchise League was not the only suffrage organization in town. We took that word almost and pinned it to the wall earlier, and now we're going to pull it back down. A less often talked about aspect of the suffrage movement and suffrage history was the really deeply ingrained racism that existed within national, state, and local clubs around the nation. And no matter what the region of the country that we're talking about or how progressive that area may have seemed, persistent racism was really always present. And in Indiana, many suffrage clubs were not open to women of color, or they were really discouraged from joining at least. So Muncie really was no different in this way. And women of color did not find themselves welcomed with open arms into the Muncie Equal Franchise League. What is unique about our community, however, is that the white members of the Franchise League did assist Muncie's African-American community in establishing the Booker T. Washington Franchise League. And while this really left Muncie's women segmented from one another at that time, remarkably, they did occasionally work together leading up to the ratification of the 19th Amendment, and both groups would attend each other's meetings and they would share resources. And I say that this is remarkable because this was certainly not the norm around the nation. It was not the norm around Indiana. So Muncie was modeling something that otherwise you only saw in a small handful of communities around our state. And let me be clear, however, that the women of the Booker T. Washington Suffrage Club, they were not reliant upon Muncie's white suffragists. Women of color such as Ida B. Martin and Josephine Pearson really ably led the Booker T. Washington Suffrage League. And these were women who worked daily to advocate for the right to vote. They really knew that that vote was a way to uplift the entire Black community. And with that in mind, they worked extraordinarily hard to get their pro-suffrage message into churches, into other organizations. And they reached as many corners as they could while educating Muncie's African-American community about the benefits of women's voting rights. And I would be remiss if I did not point out that in total, I had said that there's really only a very small handful of communities in Indiana that organize Black suffrage leagues. In most Indiana communities, it's not even that they didn't organize these leagues. Black women were not welcomed into many of Indiana's suffrage leagues. So Muncie really was looking at how to run a different model on this. And that is something that I think we should really just note for the inspiration of. So I'm looking at the clock and I want to start to wrap this up here, but what I'm hoping you can take away from this very brief glimpse at the history of suffrage activities in our community is that Muncie really has a very, very rich history related to women. And the histories and stories of women in Muncie have been told, but they're also waiting to be told. There's so many more things that need to be brought to light, and these things can spark inspiration for all of us. And Muncie's suffrage movement is really a prime example of how women from many walks of life came together to fight for a cause that they really truly believed in. So whether it was a member from the Ball family, a wife of a foreman at a local factory, a local laborer, maybe an area homemaker, these women were remarkable and inspiring. And coming from a very broad segment that drew on a spectrum of races, ages, economic levels, and life experiences, these women really recognized that the goal of securing women's voting rights was a commonality shared between them. And that was something that they could not only share, but they could connect with their fellow residents and with each other about. So when the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920, these women, they shared many emotions with one another. They, of course, expressed joy and excitement. Many of them wondered if their color of skin would continue to keep them from the polls. And others really began to consider what they would do next, what their next step would be. And in the end, suffragists always knew that the ratification of the 19th Amendment was not their final goal. Rather, it was one milestone in a much longer road towards women's equality and community improvement. And that was a road that included civil rights activism, securing the Voting Rights Act of 1965, lobbying for the Equal Rights Amendment, and advocating for women's fuller involvement in American society as women and as citizens. So today, we've heard about a really remarkable handful of inspiring women. And I am so glad that you asked me to join and that I got to hear about such great things that are going on in our community. And I really, truly believe that if Muncie suffragists were here listening to this today, I really think really big smiles would be on their face for all of these great accomplishments and the things that are happening and continuing to happen in our community. So in closing, in this centennial year of women's voting rights, I'd really like to challenge each of us to go home, or as the case is virtually, a lot of us are home already, but to think about a strong woman from our own past, or a woman that maybe we know today, maybe someone we heard about today. Who is she? What has she done? What about her inspires you? And then I would ask that each of us really think about what small thing we could each do in our own lives to emulate that woman or what she stands for. As suffragists so often reminded the public after ratification, having an opportunity, whether at the ballot box, at home, or anywhere else, was only impactful if that opportunity was used. And as women and citizens, we each have countless opportunities, even if they seem small, and even if we have to make those opportunities ourselves, to work to better our communities and our society. So that's what I'd like to leave everyone with today, is to really think about what we can do. And that's what I have for you, Nancy. So I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen now, and hopefully it will work.
While you're sharing your screen, did you bring your book to this Zoom meeting? Can you hold up a copy?
Oh, actually, hold on.
All right, we want to see it. While we're waiting, her book is called Exploring Women's Suffrage Through 50 Historic Treasures. And I want to see what it looks like.
My own copy with all my little tabs in it, but there it is.
Good job.
That's
wonderful. You're a great speaker. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. This has been great.
This concludes our ceremony today, but I have a list of thank yous to give because it took some people behind the scenes to make this happen. Thank you to Sarah Vitale for technical support, the League of Women Voters Guru in social media, Teresa Basie, Buck Creek in Bloom provided those pretty flowers and other flowers for this occasion. Christy Williams, the calligraphy, Muncie chapter of Indiana Black Expo for program production, the YWCA Central Indiana for printing, Muncie-Delaware County Coalition of Women's Organizations, and the Women's Equality Day Committee, Jean Ammon, Marion Cooley, State Representative Sue Arrington, Watasha Barnes Griffin, who was my backup in case my media failed, Susan Johnson, Fred Meyer, and Sarah Vitale. Other important information, including a short biography of Vivian Conley, can be found on the inside back cover of our program. If you're interested in obtaining a digital version of the program, please email the Women's Equality Day Committee at this email. Ready? Women's Equality Day Muncie @gmail.com. Women's Equality Day Muncie @gmail.com. Now, please do return for Women's Equality Day celebration next year. It'll be the 101st anniversary of the passing of the 19th Amendment, and so it'll be another blowout. Thank you everyone for being here today. This ends our Zoom meeting and our Facebook Live. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.